thing, I can tell already versus my 1100, it does feel a little bit heavier than what he just had discussed with me. He was like it's probably about 70 pounds heavier. His brake pedal is way higher than mine. I had to really bring my foot off the footrest to reach the pedal. Yeah, to reach the pedal for the brake. I feel with the handlebar set up on this, it feels like it's low. Like this is a much more relaxed riding position, probably more comfortable and easier on one's elbows. Chugging it along in third gear. Let's make this turn. Ooh, it's chugging. This thing in third gear right now, doing about 35. Here we go. I probably had it in a little bit of a higher gear coming up that hill than it should have been. I think that's why it's fucking like that. It's very smooth on the bumps. It seems like it's like every little bump in the road it takes it pretty well. It's pretty comfortable. The interface on it, the display is pretty nice. It's got options for a block, trip display, stuff like that. Yeah, it's got a little bit going on there. Brought up the fourth gear with that. Slow down a little bit up here because there's all this gravel right here. Oh. It has a pretty comfortable feel in the riding position. However, I noticed leaning it's a little difficult to lean for me. I think it's just because it is in fact so heavy. It's got a nice big headlight. I wonder if I turn it off a little bit. Might have left it on. Yeah, you just really gotta come up to get this brake. Oh, okay. So one thing that I noticed coming down hills, this thing picks up a little bit of speed. It's got a little bit of girth, it seems like, to it. So like when you're coming down hills, I can tell that because it's so heavy, it just wants to get it's like gaining a little bit of momentum and speed coming down. There's some deer up here. A lot of deer out back this way. It shifts pretty clean. Shifting it from up and down, pretty smooth. It's got a really smooth action. I like this riding angle in these grips. It's almost like it's got some kind of comfort added to it because you're not totally horizontal. Like the grips, you see my hands, they're kind of angled, not like kind of a little bit more vertical than horizontal, which just makes this whip really comfortable. Down
Alright, so for this part of the video, I am going to do a recording over the video because I'm recording this with a GoPro camera on my helmet, and the wind when we brought it up the highway speeds was just a little bit too noisy, and I was not able to edit it out. But back to the bike, brought the bike up to about 50 miles per hour the whole way down the highway here. And one thing that I noticed immediately once it stabilized at 50 miles per hour is just that it stabilized. There was so little wind resistance on this bike that was affecting how it traveled and how it controlled. I mean, it was basically unmovable by the wind. And the only wobble that I felt was any wobble that I generated. Now, with my 1100cc Yamaha Vstar, I have a smaller 1100, and it's slightly smaller than this by probably about 70 pounds. We're guesstimating. We haven't actually looked up specs to do a side-by-side comparison. But the owner of the bike, he told me that he believes it's about 70 pounds more, and I believe that to be relatively accurate as well. You know, there's probably only like within a 100-pound window of difference, which doesn't sound like a lot whenever you're comparing it to the overall weight of the bike. However, 100 pounds is 100 pounds, and that's a lot of weight. But when you add that to this vehicle, you know, and you add that to this bike, it seems to really make a huge difference. And I noticed a lot of that weight making a big difference at slower speeds, like whenever we were on the back roads there. And whenever I was on highway speed, doing 50, going down a straight line, going down the highway, this thing was incredibly comfortable to ride. I mean, it was very stable. It was a windy day. I don't know if you can see from the trees and the leaves blowing around, but it was a windy day, and my helmet was feeling that wind resistance. You know, I was catching my neck, catching my helm, kind of moving your head around a little bit. Not anything drastic or anything, like it wasn't crazy winds, but it was a little windy, and I noticed it more on my personal being than I did experiencing it from the bike itself. So, I had once heard a description of certain cruisers as what is considered just a straight line cruiser. Like a lot of people say the Harley Davidson V-Rod is considered just a straight line cruiser. That is basically what I would describe this vehicle as. You know, this 1300 V-Star I would classify as like a large size cruiser, maybe a mid-sized cruiser. I mean, there's definitely cruisers bigger than this, so I would consider it like a medium-sized heavyweight cruiser. But it was very stable in the wind, and I would also consider it, like I said, a straight line cruiser. Meaning, like if I had to make a lot of turns with this frequently around town, it would become rather cumbersome quickly. You know, the weight of this thing going around, stopping and going frequently. Like anytime you have to stop this bike, like at that stop sign right before I got on the highway, you kind of heard a little bit of an oof, like a little bit of a grunt there going from me. That was just because the bike is just kind of a big, heavy thing. You have to really, really let the throttle and the brakes and stuff like that control the bike more so than your feet when you're going slow. I mean, you should be doing that anyways, but definitely an emphasis on that. And you kind of have to speak with your chest whenever you are riding and communicating to this bike. And what I mean by speaking to it with your chest is when you're trying to make this bike lean or turn, you have to really put some weight into it because it's so heavy, in my opinion. Um, versus the lighter model 1100, where the friend riding it, this is his bike that I'm on. We swap bikes, and he's right behind me the entire video on mine, and he described mine as being the much more nimble little brother version of this. And after riding both bikes, I would absolutely agree with that. So coming up here, you're going to see me do some little bit of left and right swerving, and that's basically just me trying to experiment right here. It's me trying to experiment with the leaning from the handlebars only, basically using counter steering. And one thing about that is, if you noticed how little my swerves were, it took a lot of oomph for me to get it to make those little swerves. So it is a very heavy bike. One thing that I would suggest doing if you have to hit this thing on bends is like use you kind of everything you got. to make this thing lean going around bends. Like, you really got to be assertive with it because of its weight. And for a lot of people, that's not necessarily a problem. But for me, I just noticed a drastic difference between the two vehicles, between the 1100 and the 1300. You know, there was a pretty big difference in the amount that it took to make this thing lean, to make this thing stop. Like I said, going down hills, like right here, I'm going down a hill. It's so heavy it wants to get some momentum. It's so heavy that it wants to, you know, take a lot more brakes to stop it.
Okay, so the throttle is, it's like if you make it start to go, okay, like you bring it up to the immediate acceleration position, there's a lot behind it. There's a lot of power behind it. It feels like it's either nothing or hang on to the handlebars. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of not really I feel like for a beginner rider like myself, something this heavy and big would probably take you a minute to master and get comfortable with. I gotta kind of play with the friction zone on the clutch. See how it kind of got away from me right there? You kind of gotta, like as soon as I let off the clutch, it was like, nope, you're going, dude. You're going. It did it again. It's like, if you start to make this thing go, you're going. And that's one thing to say about the 1300 is that it's pretty powerful. I mean, as it should be though, 1300, which you expect. But I think that if you master the friction zone and you master the clutch, like you learn to never let off of it aggressively, because the bike, you know, it'll move as fast as your hands will go. Alright, so I just came in on this road on my 1100. It's a little bit smaller than this, and I can already tell this thing's a smooth ride in comparison, but I can also kind of tell that it's a little bit kind of harder to control it. And I think a lot of that is just because of that acceleration that it has. Like if I were to drag race this, drag race this versus mine, this thing's probably going to get up and go a lot faster. So that's one thing to consider if you're looking at these bikes. I can see maybe later down the road I would possibly upgrade to this, maybe. But definitely not a starter bike, man. You're going to start on a bike. So my first bike was the 1100, and that is a little big. Starting off on. This is too big to start off. See, again, it's like it's hard to find that sweet spot with the throttle to kind of keep it from like jolting off and jerking you forward. It's a lot of bite. I have to look up the specs on this. I'd like to see exactly what the horsepower is on this thing, because it's got to be significant. One thing that my friends have been saying is that it drives like a hog. That is total truth. This thing drives like a hog, or a whale, I'm sorry. Drives like a whale. It's like you're riding a whale out around. Yeah, it was too much for first gear there. bike that wants to be on the highway. I also don't recommend it as your first bike. It's a lot. It's got a lot of strength behind it.